What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Now, this is a sequel to another video that I made a few weeks ago. This is the worst theme park layout in America, and it became so successful that overall, out of my 5-year YouTube time, it became my second most viewed video ever, and is still going up. So, well, let's just say there's a little bit of popular demand for this one. I've had a few requests for this one, and I really like the idea of it. So, in the last time I mentioned the worst park layout in the country, well, today I want to go a little more optimistic and talk about the best. In my opinion, at least, what the best layout in the country is for amusement parks. So, we are going to start this video off by looking at the flaws of the worst layout, just to, of course, have a little bit of a review, and then look at the qualities that would make a layout great, and then tell you, in my opinion, what my favorite theme park layout in the country is. This is Cedar Flags, and today I will be talking about my favorite theme park layout in the United States. So, like I said in the last video, something very important that a lot of us enthusiasts overlook is the park's layout. Going into a park, we don't expect to be affected by that, but by the end of the day, we might look back and say, wow, that park had a really good layout, or that layout was so confusing it took us so much longer to get to a ride. And that is where I talked about Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom has just about every flaw in a park layout. This park layout is just bad. It's so bad that you could easily tell when Six Flags added onto it, when it was the former Marineland property. It has a lot of dead ends, and even if rides are placed right next to each other, it might take a good walking distance. Medusa and Joker, even though they look like they're right next to each other, are separated by the main midway that leads into the entrance. So you have to walk throughout the entire circumference of the park just to get to Medusa. Anyway, let's talk about some qualities that I think should be included in the best theme park layout and would make a park qualify for that at the very least. Now, when designing or coming up with a theme park, the layout should be a very important factor. They're going to have guests' reactions throughout the day, and this might affect the overall day and experience of the customer. So I came up with 5 different criterias for a good park layout. The first one is a central entrance. No, it doesn't have to be perfect, none of these have to be perfect, but at least try to make the entrance as central as possible. Something that is right in the center of the park's length or width. Now, I talk about Cedar Point a lot on this channel, and it's very positive, but I am going to actually complain a bit. Cedar Point's entrance is placed in a very weird location. If you don't know, the island that Cedar Point is placed on is extremely long but very thin. Now, of course, this might not be the park's fault, but I'm not basing it off of that, I'm just basing it off of circumstance. The entrance is placed at the very southern tip of the island near the parking lot, and even though the park's layout is very thin, the length of the park, well, it's a mile walk from Gatekeeper to Steel Vengeance. You should never walk a mile in an amusement park from one ride to another. That's ludicrous. And I think this might be the longest distance you have to walk for a ride in the country from the entrance. It's honestly crazy. And if you try to get last ride of the night on Steel Vengeance, yeah, that's going to be one heck of a walk back. So, even though I love this park to bits, this is one major complaint I have about the park. A second thing I want to talk about is a central hub or hubs. Now, one of the first parks that really came up with an idea of this is Disneyland in California. Now, of course, the central hub there is, of course, the castle, and you could find these hubs in many other Disney parks such as Magic Kingdom. These are very easy meeting places, and if they do it right, all of the paths will mainly lead to the hub. So if you want to go from the hub to this ride location, well, it's going to be pretty easy. The hub should be located near or at the center of the park, and at the center of all of the paths. There are so many great parks that do this, and maybe there are some that don't. But I think a major complaint about some parks is that there is no centerpiece. I have been to many parks such as Dollywood and Busch Gardens Tampa that are shaped like an O layout. This is a pretty cool idea when it comes to circumstance and theming, but when it comes to that central hub and connectivity to other paths, yeah, it's pretty tough. If you've ever been to Busch Gardens Tampa, you know that SheiKra and Pantopia are located basically right next to each other, but there is no path leading from one to the other. There is no central area that connects all the areas, you have to walk from area to area throughout the park's layout. Same thing with Dollywood. If you want to go from Thunderhead to Craftsman Valley, you are going to have to walk. Of course, I do give a little bit of slack on this one because there is a massive hill, but they had a path with mountain slidewinders, so why couldn't they do it here? Anyway, that's a little bit of a complaint, but nothing too big. Nowhere near as bad as the dead ends. Number 3 is a big one. Number 3 is that you should not walk too much in between rides. Basically, not too much walking distance in between other rides. So let's say 2 rides are next to each other. Let's say, of course, SheiKra and Pantopia's. Let's say Falcon's Fury. These 2 rides are pretty close to each other, but will take a very long time to walk across. If you learned about displacement and distance, that's going to be a massive ratio here. Rule number 4, dead ends. Dead ends are a major problem when it comes to parks. There's some pretty big dead ends. And finally, number 5, are the rides placed well? This has nothing to do with the path formation, but the ride placement. Let's say there are a bunch of elite roller coasters in one section of the park. It's going to affect it a lot. For an example, going back to Cedar Point, Frontier Town, well, they have what many people call the 2 best rides in the park. And the big 4, Millennium Force, Top Thrill, Dragster, Steel Vengeance, and Maverick, and maybe some other fan favorites like Magnum and Gemini, they are all located in the back half of the park. And I've seen midway through the day there being massive bottlenecks in that side of the park, while at the front half of the park there's barely anyone, just people entering and exiting the park. So this is a pretty big deal. I think a park that does this very well is Kennywood. You have Phantom's Revenge on the Lost Kennywood side, and Steel Curtain on the south side of the park near Racer. I think they really nailed it there, but that is of course a much smaller park. Anyway, that is my 5 reasons. Now, what park did I choose that fits the criteria of all 5 of these? Well, even though it's not perfect, I think that this park does them the best. So, what park have I picked? Well, I thought about it and I really didn't want to repeat parks from my last video, but oh well, I have to go back to Kings Island. Kings Island in Mason, Ohio, I really love this park layout, and I could see this park layout being one of the best reasons that people consider Kings Island one of their favorite parks. Kings Island has a lot to offer for its ride collection, as well as its layout, and when many people talk about the great things about Kings Island, the layout might be a little overshadowed. So let's talk about it and give Kings Island's layout some love. I think that this layout perfects 4 out of the 5 categories, but is a little weak in one of them. First of all, a central entrance. There is an entrance right in the center area of the park, and it will let you go from left to right, judging where you want to go. And it's a perfect area for an entrance. It's right in the middle of the park, and is an equal distance from just about every single attraction at the ends of the park. Talking about number 2, a central hub or hubs. Once you enter the park, you enter into its main street area, has a lot of great shops and restaurants and areas to look. This is a very nice area to wind down from all the rides, and it leads you to the center of the park, the beautiful open Eiffel Tower. This is a 1/3 scale replica of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, and you could see it from everywhere in the park. You could see it from Banshee, you could see it from Planet Snoopy, you could see it from Rivertown. This Eiffel Tower is everywhere, and it is very easy to find if you're lost in the park, if such thing is possible. It is located in the very center of the park, and it is very easy to meet up with other people. Just walk towards the Eiffel Tower. Meet at the Eiffel Tower at 5 o'clock? Okay, fair enough. So, let's talk about the 3rd category. Not too much walking distance in between rides. Now, funny enough, this park actually takes the same area as Cedar Point, but something that Kings Island does genius is that they stick the rides outwards instead of the paths. They keep the paths in a very central area and put the rides in a back area so you don't have to walk an incredibly long distance from ride to ride. They place all the ride stations next to each other, but put all the rides out in the open areas. You have Diamondback right next to Mystic Timbers, very quick walk, and you have all these rides quickly next to each other, but you can get from one to the other. There aren't any confusing zigzags that you have to go through. If a ride's next to another, it's going to be pretty easy to get to it. Now, the number 4 category is the one that I don't think it fully perfects. In fact, Kings Island has some pretty nasty dead ends. Area 72 is an exception. I don't think this is a horrible dead end because it's very close to everything else, and it has 2 attractions, so it isn't really a main dead end for one attraction. It's its own separate area, plus it's pretty small. But The one that really bothers me is of course the one with bats. This is a very long walk and it takes you a bit. You really don't feel like you're in the park anymore by the time you walk to bat. There used to be Son of Beast here, so it might have been a little easier, but still, it's very complicated, and I really don't think they're going to change this whatsoever. Maybe if they add a separate attraction in the former Son of Beast plot, it will be more reasonable to go, but I think this is the only major problem in Kings Island's layout that keeps it from being absolutely perfect. This was not included in the original park plan, it was added later, but I think it's still a good idea if they move the ride altogether, but I feel like that would be too much money and not worth it at all. Now the final category, we are going to talk about rides placed well. Look at some of the most loved rides in the park. Banshee, Orion, Diamondback, and Mystic Timbers. These are what I call the big four of the park. These are all located throughout the edge of the park and are a pretty equal distance away. Like I said, you have Rivertown with Mystic Timbers and Diamondback. You walk a little bit, there's Area 72. You walk a little bit more and there's Action Zone with Banshee. Now there is a whole separate area of the park without any major attractions, but that's okay because this is Planet Snoopy. This isn't designed for the thrill seekers to go through anyways, so let's scrap that part of the park entirely while talking about this. I think it's a great idea that they dedicated its own corner of the park to Planet Snoopy, so it could allow kids to enjoy their own time without having thrill seekers walk through. It's perfect for traffic, and not too far from anything else if a teenager wants to go from place to place. Anyway, what do you think is the best park layout in the country? I think Kings Island takes the cake. I think Kings Dominion had the original same plan, but over the years, the layout for that park has gone a little wonky. So what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. And what do you think is the best park layout in the country? This is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.